So we have Sindy Zemura-Bernard. And I just wanted to say the little bit I know about Canada. I was told that if you ever say I'm from Toronto, they won't believe you. You got to say I'm from Toronto.
Well, okay, let me try. I'm from Toronto. Did I do it right? I think I tried.
But you're not from Toronto. What do you do?
Oh, well, how are you doing? I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me, ladies, to be here today. And it's actually my birthday, so I feel really special. So thank you so much.
Yes. Happy birthday to you again. Happy. Thank you for spending the evening with us. I mean, you could be doing anything. So no, I mean, I just want to know what it feels like when you are Zimbabwean, but you get acknowledged in Canada as top 100 Canadian Black women leaders. And that's not even your country, but there you are getting acknowledged. I mean, you've got so many accolades under your belts. How does that feel?
To be honest, I think for me, it's not really about my acknowledgement, but it's acknowledging all of us, right? Because when you move to a country and you're an immigrant and you are a woman, for starters, you are young, and then the color of your skin, so many facets of it play against you. But I think one thing that I've always said to myself is I'm here for a purpose and for a reason. So for every move that I make, I'm not just really doing it for Sindy, but I'm doing it for Mildred, for Mucha, for Chenesai, for that little girl in Zimbabwe who sometimes, doesn't even know what life is like ahead for her, but she dreams about, overseas, because we all grew up with a desire to move overseas, even though we didn't really understand what it meant to go overseas. So for me, it's really for the village. It's not really about me, because we're ultimately putting our home, on the map. There's so much talent that's in each of us and many of us, and I think collectively we make this whole big unit. So really, it's just, I'm humbled all the time.
Well, good for you, and we'll talk more about your amazing self shortly. So let me now also welcome Mildred Munjanganja. How are you?
Oh my goodness, honored to be among such powerful women. I don't even think I'm humbled. In fact, I don't know if I belong, but really honored to be among you guys. Thank you.
You're right at home. Honestly, you're right at home. Honestly, it's good to have. Well, how is Florida?
Florida is fantastic. We have a rainy day today, but usually it's warm all year round. So I hope you guys are a little bit jealous of that. But
it's very, very good to have you. And then we also have Chenesai. The Zimbabweans that know Chenesai, I mean, they follow her on Instagram. They see her in so many different colors and in so many different ways. Besides her amazing brand, Chenesai, you're a lawyer. Do you know that a lot of people don't know that? How do you keep that tucked away and that deliberate? Because everything you post on the gram has nothing to do with law.
That's actually interesting, because as of Wednesday, we're going to change that narrative. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's always an opportunity and a great honor for me to talk about women empowerment, glass ceilings, and just kind of tell a story to someone who's happy to listen and tell the story to someone else. So I give my time to such platforms. So I'm really happy to be here and absolutely honored as well. And to be moderated by Madame Boss. I've been looking forward to work with that.
So, you guys are making me nervous now. Stop that. No, this is great. And then I must last, but in no means least, okay, the woman who's brought these women together, right? All of us here on this forum right now, we're brought together one woman. It was a text or it was a call, and it was so sincere and so convincing. Okay, it's almost like, you ever met somebody who says, let's have lunch on Friday at 2, as opposed to, can we have lunch? It's almost like a demand and like a statement, but it's the power of communication. I want to just say thank you first, okay, to Mucha Nyandoro, and welcome to your own platform for bringing us all together. How are you doing over there in Dubai?
I am doing absolutely well. Thank you so much, ladies, for making my day by agreeing to be on this platform. No coercion, I promise. I think I was very nice in my request, and I'm excited to be here with you all. You're such an amazing, phenomenal group of women, and it's an honor to be sharing the table with you.
Yeah. So here's one thing. No, thank you, Mucha. So here's one thing that women all the time struggle with, is being honest with each other off the bat. Okay. So to the women on this platform, Mucha, I'm pairing you with Chenesai, and then Sindy, I'm pairing you with Mildred. So what you're each going to do is you're going to give me, all of us, your first impression of the other person. I mean, off the bat. Not like sort of, no, I read her profile. No, I support. Let's be honest, okay? Whether it was you went to her Instagram profile and you saw, okay? Whatever it is, I want you to just give me your honest opinion. So we'll start with Mucha. Give me your most honest opinion.
My opinion of Chenesai is this Black woman rocks. I didn't quite know what she did at that point, but you know, that bold statement of wearing a bold head, of wearing vibrant colors, and then as you start to peel the layers, discover that she's a professional woman. She kind of talks to stuff that I think a lot of lawyers, for instance, like to kind of be classified by the type of law they practice. Yeah. And here you've got someone who's happy to talk about fashion and the arts and yet apply the law to all of that. So I was just fascinated by her, hence why we're on this platform together today.
Right, I like that. Okay, Chenesai, head back.
Assertive and very sure of what she wants. She messaged me once, literally messaged me once. I want to do this. I want to talk about women. I want to talk about women's empowerment. I've got this platform. And she was so sure of what she wanted. And this is, I think she was in ideation at that point. 2 days later, she had it fixed. She's like, okay, who do you think your panel? Who? And then she's like, I got this. I want to look into this. She says, who can moderate? I propose. She's like, you know what? I'm going to connect this. I love that. There's nothing more pleasing and more welcoming than a woman who knows what they want, and not only who know what they want, how to implement. It's absolutely so crucial in the fight that we're in right now. So many great talkers, few implementers. So Mucha, your nickname from me is implementer. You implement.
Thank you. I'm humbled by that.
I love it. See what I told you? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I'm alive. See you. All right. Cindy, over to you. Your first impression of Mildred.
Well, first impression was bulldozer for sure. Like literally Mildred will bulldoze everything, open all the doors and just walk straight right through. And that's just how, I've known her. She's a go-getter. She's not afraid to be in her own element. She's not defined by the status quo. She makes her own status quo, and she invents the wheel. She doesn't wait for anyone else to teach her or to tell her how things are done. And I really admire how, her career, even her career path or her personal life, she hasn't been comfortable with just choosing the norm. She often goes for things that some of us as, I hate to generalize everything, but for women, sometimes we think, oh, you know what, I don't belong there because, that field is really, it's very patriarchal. There are men that are leading in that space, but you find her there. You find her in a meeting with, 50 men and she's the only woman in the room. And I'm like, yes, girl, just go for it. So for me, anytime I'm like, I need to get my big, sister pants up, pull up your socks, I give Mildred a call and like, no doubt, she gets me there.
I love that.
Thank you.
Mildred, over to you.
Oh my goodness, Cindy, we could spend all day talking about this woman. So my one word for Cindy is excellence. She has a certain level of quality about everything that she does, whether it's being a mom, being a wife, being an entrepreneur, being a humanitarian, being a friend, being a sister. There's a level of consistency and quality that is just impressive to see. And, I dedicate the poem Phenomenal Woman to her because there's so much grace in everything that she is. And every time I look at her, I'm like, how could you be this powerful human being and yet you're so humble? So it doesn't matter whether she's speaking to someone, Kumusha, with the gogos, in the rural areas, she's in her Zambia, she's on her knees, right? And it's the same level of humility and quality that transcends in everything that she does. So listen, I've known this woman for a very long time and I love her with all my heart, and I continue to learn from you and I continue to be in awe of who you are and who you continue to be.
Oh man, this is wonderful.
Okay. Making me emotional before we've even started.
Make me cry. This is why he's
No, stop it. No, you stop. No, I love you more. Yeah, no, you know what? I think this is the best way to sort of be honest and sort of put it out there about how we look at each other as women. But what I've gotten from everybody is a level of respect, I think, for everyone's hustle. Everybody who's on this platform is respectful in their own right, in their own sector. So I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, game recognized game, right? That's what they say. So it's nice to have women here who respect that. But I want to come to Sindy quickly. You know, when I read profiles of women, you know, wherever I am, you know, before I introduce anybody anywhere in the world, it's interesting to read the profiles because the profiles are so personal. And one thing that stood out in your profiles, you said mother first. I want to touch on that, you know, because we have these, as we're talking of glass ceilings, you're a mom, you've got kids, and I know most women here do. So the first thing I want to talk about is that branding. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a mother or if you're a wife. We live in a society where even in the corporate world, older women will respect you more as a woman if you're a wife. You know, if you're a mother, you know, they'll value your opinion more. So I want to just tap into that subject with all the ladies here and just say, look, how do we handle that element? Forget the men for a second. We'll come to them. But women to women, right? That you know, even in the corporate sector. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Personally, I always like to say that before I can extend myself to anybody else outside of this blessing that God has instilled upon me to basically be a carer for, I call them angels on this world. I take that as a very huge responsibility, because then I take my time that I'm able to give and the love that I'm able to give to my children and be able to extend that out to the world. And I often find that in the very private moments or in those times when, you know, there's so many things as individuals that we deal with, you know, outside of being out in the public spaces or just outside of marriage, but just as individuals. I've honestly found solace in my children. They comfort me. Just getting that little bit of a hug from them, or just having one of them come and just say, "Mommy, give me a hug," or just knowing that this little person is dependent on me for their livelihood, it really gives me this huge warmth. But it also really equips me to say, if these two young people can look up to me to say, "We are trusting in you for our livelihood," ultimately it strengthens me. It gives me purpose. It really gives me a calling to be able to step out there and make sure that I am, first of all, well within me and around them before I can really extend myself. So I take that responsibility very, very seriously, in the sense of it has to be well for me and my children first before I can step out and be, you know, out in the world. But also, when I say I'm a mother first, it doesn't really have to do with my biological children, because I found that I'm also a mother to many other people that, who I've extended sort of like my giving, my care, my love. Being motherly is not just, you know, the children you've carried in your stomach and you've given birth to. Being motherly is nurturing. Being motherly is the love and the care and the concern for them. So I think in everything that I do, in my friendships, in my advocacy work, in activism, I carry that spirit of nurturing first before I can be anything else.
I like that. And Chenesai, I'll come to you on this one as well. Every so often you also post your kids, and I'll just shoot straight and ask, you know, honestly, did having children slow you down as you were reaching the ceiling?
No, actually. I think perhaps for me, I waited a long time to have kids. I mean, I've been married 10 years and we decided to have kids. I think it was the right time. If anything, having kids gave me a new reason to work harder. So pregnancies, both my pregnancies, I worked extremely hard. I traveled quite a lot. With a great caution, of course, from my doctors, but it actually has fueled me up, because every time I wake up and I see these people, they need to feed, they need to eat, they need to be inspired. I am so fueled to create a better world for my children. Particularly, I look at the creative sector and imagine if my sons want to be creatives, I do not want them to struggle to make ends meet as creatives. So it pushes me further to build these systems so that one day if Kundai, lo and behold, decides to be a designer, decides to be an artist, a song-songwriter, whatever, there are systems that will allow him to make a decent living out of it. So having kids, a renewed sense of purpose to pursue higher and to pursue harder, and to be so unapologetic about what I'm doing, because I've got people that depend on me that quite express just how much.
I want to ask now, Mucha, that, do you feel that there needs to be a balance, right? With women, when we're achieving what we do and looking at the portfolios as if the women here, it's not something that comes easy. You don't just work the UN just by mistake. You know what I mean? You don't end up on these lists by mistake. So when we talk of the diversity challenges, we talk of diversity in the corporate space, and when talking about these glass ceilings, this is men, right? Tell me about your journey in terms of the challenges you faced being a mother to get to where you got to. And if you can, just even share one sacrifice you had to make, where you know that, what, I could have gone left, but because of my kids, I went right.
Sure, glad to. Those who've seen me on Facebook may think that I'm from a journalism type background. I'm not. I'm actually from the financial services. This is just something that I've decided to do during COVID. In terms of kind of, I guess, developing my professional background and balancing that out with motherhood, like every woman out there, I'm sure, we face this treacherous journey that we just need to be able to get through. And treachery for me is being able to, like Mildred, in fact, Mildred and I call each other soul sisters because we've got very similar experiences professionally. So being that only woman in a room full of males, being that only Black person on your floor, for instance, and you just learn to kind of find your space and run with it. But with that comes the whole idea of kind of balancing that professional trajectory with motherhood. And in my case, I've made it such a point to ensure that my boys understand the importance of independence, that's thinking independently, working independently. Of course, I'm there to support them all the way through. But in seeing me work, I believe and I hope that I've inspired them to actually understand what the fruit of hard work is. And that then kind of starts permeating in their own work ethic. And if I've achieved anything as a mum, it's kind of releasing my children into the big bad world and them being okay. And it would be a tragedy to fail at that, given how many other young people I help along the way. So it's such an important subject matter for me and something that sits extremely close to my heart. You talked about sacrifice. I think the obvious thing for me, so I've worked for the likes of JP Morgan, HSBC, and a whole combination of roles and in different markets. And in all those markets, when you kind of move, say, from the UK to a place like Dubai, you're stepping into a new culture, into a new friendship set. Your children are being plugged into new schools, so they're needing to learn how to adapt. They're needing to learn to survive in new environments. And if there's one thing that I think they have done exceptionally well at, it's adapting. And I hope that of many people, I think the sacrifices we feel we're making are not being able to follow through our dreams or our aspirations because we're mothers or we're wives or partners or whatever it is. Whereas in my case, I'm me before I occupy any role. And I know that this is a controversial statement, but I have to be me first in order to be effective in any role I play. So that's me being effective as a mom, as an employee, as an employer, as I've got my own business as well. Sacrifice very quickly will be putting a stop on my business aspirations because I've got practical day-to-day things to take care of. So I've had this kind of relationship between the corporate world and the entrepreneurial world, which is fascinating for me every single time. But it's something that I continue to navigate and traverse with pride and figure out as we go along. And that's me in a nutshell.
Got it. And see, in terms of titles, right, we talk of the ceiling, but what is the ceiling? And that's what I want to discuss with the ladies here as well. So, for example, Mucha, you've been a CFO, you've been a head, you've been a vice president, you've been a principal consultant, you've been a founder, and so there's so many titles that many women here carry, and a lot of it comes down to founder. In a lot of ways, I think women here have founder. I mean, Mildred, you founded Zim Thrive, okay, which is thriving. So I want to come to you, Mildred, in terms of these hats we all wear and we carry, and your e-commerce, your B2B, so also borderline sort of male-dominated industry as well. As a vice president, being sort of one of your titles and crowns that you have worn, and then now a founder. What is the ceiling for you? We have had so many fights and battles that we fought as women, and the women that came before us. But now, if you're sitting at the table and you're vice presidenting and you're founding, what is the ceiling beyond that? What more do we want as women? And do you feel that where you are now is a ceiling, or is there more?
For me, my ultimate career goal or my ultimate goal as an individual or as a leader is to create the biggest impact that I possibly can to the generation that is following me. And even before my daughter was born, I did it for her. You know, I always said I need to create a work environment where she will be able to flourish. I need to create a business environment where she'll be able to be creative and entrepreneurial. And I need to create a home environment where she will be happy and just at peace. And so that's my ultimate goal. You'll find that on my LinkedIn, I tend not to put titles. My LinkedIn right now says constant improver. Prior to that, it said doer of things. And the reason I shy away from these titles is because I do believe that they limit us. Because at the end of the day, you know, whether I am a founder, a COO, or whatever role it is that I am playing, I am part of a bigger team that is doing something much bigger than ourselves. And one of my biggest goals is, you know, gender partnership, ensuring that we have men around us who help propel our causes as women and as men, because ultimately, you know, we don't want to ignore any gender. You know, some of the ladies here have sons, and, you know, I happen to have a daughter. So of course that is a very important, you know, equality is such an important subject matter to me. But ultimately, gender partnership. Let's ensure that we have people around us, men and women, who are propelling our futures and, you know, the future generation. Yeah.
I like that answer, because you sort of merged into the subject we can never run away from when we talk about this, and it's men. Okay, I'll come to Chenesai on this one. So in the beginning when we were doing the icebreakers, it was said about how distinct your look is. All right, Mucha talked about your look and your, you know, your bald head and, you know, just being so bold and so confident. There was a time I stalked your Instagram, you know, before I knew you properly, and I went down into your old pictures, and there's you with hair, you know, weaves, whatever. It's a completely different look, but you know what? You were there. So my question now comes to the aspect of sharing a life with someone. All right, you have a husband, you have to be married, you know, you've got kids. But when we talk about support, just like Mildred touched on just now, in terms of support from men, how much of that support we really need? You know, this glass ceiling element is not just about what we face when we're at work. It's also what we face when we're at home. Stereotypically, Chenesai, when someone looks at your photo, you've got this like bold look, you've got this, you know, almost even somebody would like look at you and be like, oh, maybe she doesn't even have a husband. She's one of those girls. She's artsy. She's in the arts industry. You know, she's, you know, there's that perception. And men also look at it like that. So I want to know, Kumba, let's talk about home. And if you're comfortable with it, if you don't mind, just let us in a little bit about how that worked for you, how that dynamic is between you and your husband, and even your in-laws, to have this feisty, bold look, even just the look, never mind your actual being. How do you manage that?
Very interesting question. In fact, very hard question. Look,
I know you can
at the core of it, and everything that you said is right. You know, generally women with bald heads get a certain stereotype. I cut my hair about 5 years ago now because I wanted to see me. I think the work I was about to do, or the work I'm doing now, needed me to get involved in it. And I was struggling with who am I? Who am I in this fight? What can I bring to the table? What story am I trying to tell? So cutting my hair was for me very symbolic in starting to see this person. And when I look in the mirror, that's the person. No hair, no weave. So it's part of a journey, and it's been very awakening so far. As far as being married, being a daughter-in-law, being a daughter, and all those roles, I think it goes back to that whole idea that first you have to be you. It's so important, as me being a wife to my husband for now almost 15 years, to still be Chenesai that comes to the table and contributes. That's how you earn respect. Respect is not given. Even as a daughter-in-law to your in-laws, they will respect you because you respect yourself. And this is where we get it all wrong. When you look at cultural settings or being married with your spouse, it's about being able to bring something to the table that he respects, and also respecting and supporting what he's bringing to the table. In my household, I like to think that my husband is an equally strong person, and we're both entrepreneurs, by the way. I'm hustling on this end, he's hustling on that end. But what I do know is the common purpose is we want a better life for not just us, for our children and our children's children. So what I have seen that defines these roles and these different positions is always understanding what is the common purpose. And this is where I feel a lot of people struggle with. It's not about going there and, as they would say, being cultured, kneeling, clapping, wearing the longer skirt. No, it's about understanding this is where respect will come from. I've got a lovely relationship with my in-laws. I mean, for the last 15 years, we have lived together. They've supported me even through things that they don't understand. And in my father-in-law's words, he said, I supported you because I could see the energy, I could see the passion, and I could see the consistency. So there's no one, no time, no one will never want to respect someone who shows clear direction. And just being mindful and saying, be clear about what you want to do and say it over and over again. You can't fault me there. People always say, but you always say what you're doing. I'm like, it's important for not only the world to know what I'm trying to do, but for the people to know what I'm trying to do. It's an accountability measure. And that measure is what helps us define the common purpose. And once you move in a common purpose, you get things done, you get the respect, you maintain your relationship with your marriage, with your in-laws. And you know what? When you walk in rooms and people have a misconception about who you are, you walk right through it because you're so sure what you want to do.
Sorry, Chenesai, you said something about your father-in-law. There's this saying, it says, men of quality will never be threatened by women's equality.
Word.
Oh, wow.
Men of quality are not threatened by women's equality.
Oh my,
that's powerful.
That's deep.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
I think I want to ask an open question now about something Chenesai touched on as well. If her father-in-law respects her, that's good. And then we take it back to the office, right? Where in Zimbabwe, for example, and maybe Chenesai will identify with this immediately, and any of you who've worked here at some point, is there's this element of varume vatinoshanda na. Okay, men we work with who want us to call them by their totem, or who, when you're at work, there's this element of, those endearing words like, oh, my dear, and, that kind of patronizing aspect. Whereas you go anywhere else in the world, you can call your CEO by their first name, man or woman. Right? But here in Zim, there's this overemphasis on, mofu mamka say, because that's your boss, and then you've got this thing going on. So I wanted to find out your thoughts on that, Puti. Where are we going with that, especially in a very Zimbabwean context? And having come out of Zim and going to work elsewhere, how do you manage those dynamics? Because, it's something that is inbuilt in us. If you're raised Zimbabwean, respect murume, whether kuru pauri kana utasiri, and Chenesai, you touched on as a joke about, nokfugama, some women still do all of that. And I don't know if it takes away from how much of a woman they are, or, takes away from their quality. So I wanted to ask that question to the panel.
Yeah, I want to jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Let me just jump in quickly with my TP on this. I think we need to decide whether we're operating from a cultural or an international platform. So if we're saying that we want to move with the times, we want to progress, we've got to be able to demonstrate that in our interactions. It's as black and white as that to me. And listening to women who work in the financial services in Zimbabwe, because I do have my touch points into that space, I'm sometimes gobsmacked by the sort of rhetoric they need to contend with. Now, I'm all for our culture and I'm all for respect and all that beautiful stuff. But if you start off from a position of subservience, you can't then expect women to excel and do as well as their male colleagues, especially in industries that are male dominated. So, we do have some women on this platform who have literally tried to and are shattering that glass ceiling, because actually I do not want to be limited by confines that I haven't created for myself. Let my mind limit me. I can just about deal with that and I can overcome it. But if just from the way I address you walking into the office puts me down here, we've already messed that equation up. So I'd like for a normalized sort of environment. If we're saying that we're operating outside the global context, I take that back.
Yeah, got it. You work with a lot of Africans and a lot of African men, right? So here we are talking about, the acceleration and all of this and these dynamics, even across cultures. It's not just Zimbabwe. You know what I mean? It's everywhere. So maybe if you can also touch on that on a Pan-African level for us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I never got a chance to be in Zimbabwe long for me to start working over there. But one thing that I've always said, I mean, I married a non-Zimbabwean to start off with. My husband is Jamaican born, but was raised in Canada and is part French and English. And, you know, culture is culture at the end of the day, but it doesn't mean that when you're not exercising it, it makes you any less or you're being disobedient to it. So when I met my husband, you know, I would still want to practice, you know, giving him the water in the bowl for him to wash his hands. And I did, of course, let him know about the culture. And when my mom came here to visit one time, the first time actually she came, she wanted to, you know, serve him the food. She wanted to just do, you know, how she was taught. And my husband was always like, no, I understand it's your culture. But for him, because it's not what he was brought up around, for him, he felt like, you know, I don't want to dehumanize you. And we had to literally have a very long conversation, not just with him, but like the entire family, to say, this is not dehumanizing anybody, but it's just that, you know, it's how you interpret that culture. But of course, now we deal a lot with, I like the word Mildred used, gender partnerships. And, you know, there's also a lot of talk about gender equality, which is, you know, the space where I do a lot of my work, where we always now look at those type of things and say, and call them cultural biases, not necessarily, you know, oppressing women, but it's cultural biases and harmful practices, because they tend now to be looked upon as, you know, they are harmful, not just to our current generations, to us, but for the generation to come, because then we realize that it was also most times a one-way street, where as a woman or as a young girl, you never had a say in whatever you were told to do. You had to buka and, you know, give the food and so forth, because Africa is such a young continent with a lot of people under 35. So what the African Union wanted to do is they instituted the first ever youth envoy, so that they could bring young people to the table, so that they could really understand why is there so much of a gap, because young people are very much removed from a lot of things that concern them. They're very much removed even from their families. They're very much removed from public service, private institutions, and things like that. But we see it happening in a lot of roles at the highest levels, in that there's men that you often have to, you know, address to them their languages as well. As in, you know, you can't just send an email and say, dear Ruvheneko. Ruvheneko is ambassador. Ruvheneko is Her Excellency or His Excellency. And so you often have to be very careful about how you address things like Mucha said. We often have to look at it as, are we looking at it from an international perspective on the international stage, or are we taking it back to the African context? And then if you do that, I often find that then you are able to handle some of these things, and you often don't feel like, oh, you know what, I was looked upon as I'm a woman, and my senior at, you know, in this position didn't address me the way I should have been addressed, or they told me, oh, you know what, you're a woman anyway, this is not your place, or you don't belong here. So it just depends from what context you are looking at it. But to be honest, ladies, I think at the end of the day, it's only you who can define, you know, what really works for you, because, you know, it doesn't mean that our culture is bad at all. There are so many things that I now appreciate about our culture, being that I'm married and I'm a mom. A part of my culture is really helping me along the way, to be quite honest.
Yeah, you know what, Cindy? So my observation in all of this is, and I'm 100% with you on that, I think the challenge kicks in when we then expect our children to go and work in New York and London and Paris, because we've kind of taught them to either wait to be acknowledged or to respect that hierarchy. They then struggle to navigate their way up the corporate ladder because they're waiting for somebody to endorse them. They're waiting to be encouraged or invited to step onto certain stages. And this becomes a little bit of an issue. Certainly in my graduate recruitment exposure, and I've done a lot of stuff with youth coming into the corporate world, I see the difference between that French kid who's been taught since the age of 4 that he belongs in whatever environment he's in, versus that African kid who's acutely intelligent, who could soar in that environment, but is just a little bit timid and is just waiting for you to prompt them and to prompt them and you don't survive unless you've got that go-getter type mentality. So I think there needs to be a careful balance in how we're molding our youth for the sort of professions and careers that we expect them to then go on and obtain.
And I think that's such a brilliant point. And I will also then challenge what you and Cindy said about are we answering in an African context or a global context. Don't you think that in itself is a problem, that we are separating these issues? When we talk of corporate, when we talk of glass ceiling, shouldn't we just be speaking about it internationally, period? And try and cultivate this from, like, you know, Mucha, you just said, when you're raising your kids, so they don't wait for that approval. They don't wait to be asked to come to the table. How do we draw the line? Because are we raising African women and girls, or are we raising international citizens in a world like today?
Great point. You know, I really think that it starts in the home. I give my parents credit because, first of all, I grew up in a home where, you know, I have brothers, right? So I didn't know that there was gender inequality. We were the same. We played the same sports. We wore similar clothes, you know, so I didn't know that there was gender parity until I got to the workplace. But credit to my parents, because my dad, for instance, at the age of 12, would ask me an opinion about a business matter, and I couldn't say I don't know or I'm not sure. He'd say, no, whatever it is you think, let me hear it. Yeah. And he would take me to meetings where he's meeting with CEOs, he's meeting with board members, and here's my daughter, she's sitting in. And at that young age, I learned that I was no different from the president. I was no different from, you know, the housekeeper. I was no different. We were all the same. And I think it allowed me to come to the US and believe that I didn't have to make an excuse or, you know, make an apology for the places that I wanted to be in. And I didn't see myself any different from anyone else. So it does begin in the home. It's so critical in our homes that we teach our children that they belong, right? And frankly, if there is no place for them at the table, then it is their responsibility to make their own table, right? So if you ever ask me, you know, what do I bring to the table? I bring the table. I bring the table. And simply because my parents told me I could. They said, if the table is there's no chair there for you and you can't drag a chair to sit at that table, create your own. So let's make sure that we're building adults, we're raising adults ultimately who will know that they have a place in the world no matter what.
And part of this, I'll give a little bit of an anecdote of a absolutely brilliant lawyer who moved from Zim, went to London, and when she got to London, her relatives immediately told her that the only work you can do is care work. Now, she had a law degree from South Africa, and she was told that you're aiming too high by trying to do stuff that's preserved for Walungu. And it's took her own initiative and her own hunger, I guess, to say, well, listen, I didn't go to school all these years to come out with a legal qualification only to become a care worker. No to care workers, obviously very critical role they play, but for somebody who's gone to school to study something and go down a career path that's intentional, to then be told actually you're kind of limited or you're being a little bit too ambitious by trying to do X, Y, and Z, again, is a messaging that we want to be really careful about. And, you know, my plug here is to just make sure that parents, as we're sending our kids out into the big bad world, yes, we groom them at home and we give them that foundation. That's absolutely critical. But there's a bigger piece of this equation, which is to dream big and to knock on whatever door kind of calls to them without that sense of limitation. Or in this case, that mindset needs to go.
No, that's solid. And I think this is coming from mums. You know, you're speaking from the heart, and also having been raised Zimbabwean and now had to enter the big bad world and take what you learned and apply it. The other element I want us to touch on is, as much as our upbringing is important, it's not a Becky ground, as much as that's important, it's also to say, what about our networks, right? And our connectivity in terms of reaching where we want to reach. We all know people say, oh, no, it's not who you know, or your network is your network, etc. So how much of that it contributes to your success and you climbing it? How much of it is all you?
No, I think your network is critical, man. I was looking at my phone, the contacts on my phone just yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, if I had to call, if I had a business opportunity and I needed someone to invest $100,000, how many people in my phone could I call? And there were a multitude. So I think it's really, really critical that you intentionally build relationships with people that can help you soar, right? And I found that, you know, in the conversation, I have people calling me saying, hey, Mel, there's this opportunity, is there something that you can do, as opposed to let's go to the club. I mean, and listen, they're great conversations. No offense to going to the club. But if the dialogue that you're having with the people in your phone, if you look at your contacts right now and your dialogue is merely ngatite brai, or, you know, what are the type of conversations you're having with the people in your phone? Are they elevated? Are you talking about investments? Are you talking about, you know, opening businesses? Are you talking about what kind of conversations are you having? And I genuinely believe that every step that I have taken has been on the shoulder of someone that has been there before me, right? Someone who was able to propel me forward. One of the most powerful meetings that I ever attended was a forum where women were sharing their salaries. It was a powerful, you know, I was the least earning woman in that room, but the lack of knowledge was what was bringing me down. I didn't know what other women in my field, because I was the only Black female, I was African. So you've got that, you know, she's a foreigner, maybe she doesn't have a green card or a working visa. I don't know, you know, all these perceptions that allow corporations to offer you a salary that is much less than what you're worth. And until I sat in that room with these women and we spoke about, okay, what does your comp structure look like? What does your bonus structure look like? You know, do you have a golden handcuff? I had no idea these things existed. So if you're not having these conversations, you don't know what you don't know. So your network is such a critical part. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
And so you appreciate that it's so valuable part. Yes, sorry, Mucha, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you've got to be really careful as well. So the quality of network is absolutely key, like Mildred is pointing out. But it's also how that network perceives you and how you position yourself in it. Because you could know the most powerful people on earth, but if they consider you a bimbo, it's not going to be really good, right?
Yeah.
So be able to navigate that network and make it work, you know, effectively as you can.
And also, I like that. I think, and again on that, I want to ask a question that I will dare the women here to answer, okay? And it's almost something that we would discuss because we don't know who's watching. But I have a question as we sort of wrap up now our conversation and put out some take-home thoughts. In terms of our networking and our ability to climb the ladder and reach that glass ceiling, how many times have you found yourself compromised as a woman, where to get something done, not that you not compromise in the extreme sense, you know, not like you sleep with anyone for anything, but it comes to those networks and even networking as a verb, right, as a continued, like, you know, constant process. How many times have you found yourself compromised as a woman where you know that you've got to be nice to a man who you know is not looking at you just because you're CFO or you're VP, but is looking at you because you have two breasts, right? How many times have you genuinely had to, like, just smile at somebody, especially a male, to continue and get ahead?
Ooh, where to start? How many hands can I you know what, Ruvheneko, I think this is some a plight that most women will face in different guises. So being compromised could be anything from you being the only woman on the team whose pastime, or who after a big deal all want to go to a strip club, and that's how they celebrate winning a deal. And your question, go to a bar and get completely legless. You want to be considered a legitimate member of the team. You want to get involved in team activities because this is where they bond and their promotion conversations and pay rises are structured and discussed. But at the same time, you've got your value system and you don't want to be seen as being that girl. So it's bad enough to be, you know, if you're an attractive young lady, there's always speculation about how you got to the space. Let's put that down as a starting point. You've got to prove yourself so much more that, yes, there's more to this pretty face. And yes, I do have experience. I'm qualified to do this job. But then take it that tier up and just know where to put your boundaries is what I say. And actually, when those boundaries are set, you find that people are quite reluctant to cross that line. But you've got to make that line.
Yeah, and you know, networks are very, very important. I think one of the things that ties into networks for me, it goes back to the whole idea of raising children. In my household, for instance, we really kind of speak Shona only and Debele. The reason why we are doing that with our children is I think no matter where you go in the world, if you're not sure of who you are and what you bring to the table, you'll never be able to penetrate. So for me, it's instilling in my children that they need to know who they are, where they come from, and be so sure and be proud of that no matter where they go, they'll walk into a room and say, my name is Kundai Maita-Mangoma and I'm from Zimbabwe and I can do this. I think without that confidence, they can't network beyond a certain level. And again, with having to compromise who we are as women, one of the things I have found, and I've struggled at the young age of 23, I was a young manager in Texas, and I was the only female and I was the only foreigner. And it was tough. One thing I do think that gains us respect as we go is consistency. You cannot one day be one thing and the next day be another thing. No matter who it is, men will adore consistency. If you look at any of the women are shattering ceilings and glass cliffs, whatever they are, one of the things, Angela Merkel, Michelle Obama, no matter who I'm going to name here, is they are so consistent to their value system that no matter where, no matter who, it doesn't matter. So it could be a woman, and if I have a value system, you can't penetrate it. It could be a man, if I have a value system, you can't penetrate it. And I think that is one thing we suffer, because as women, sometimes we want to be nice, and the next thing we want to be moody. No, this is professional, it's not personal. You go in there and you're consistent. You show your best cards at all times. So for me, with network and getting over this hump that men sometimes present, is be consistent. If your mean face is your consistency, then be that. If you smile all the time, then smile all the time, right? But you have to be consistent.
And that consistency also comes in the way that you put yourself together. So I'm a really girl in the way that I like to dress up and so forth. And I don't want to be apologetic and emasculate myself because I'm in a male environment and, you know, you only survive your butch, or you detract from attention. You kind of dumb yourself or dumb yourself down. I don't believe in that at all. So I'm completely with you. This is what you see is what you get, quite frankly. When it's time to talk business, I hope that the person that is through quite strongly, people are able to see what you're made of. But my thing is, as you just being your authentic self is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
You know, Ruvheneko, your question just reminded me of an incident. I had a situation where, you know, I was working with a CEO who wanted to make a decision that was unethical, you know, and I don't compromise my ethics. I don't compromise who I am, and I do it with no apology. And I said to him, listen, my responsibility is this. If you elect to do something that's unethical, that will compromise your business, right, and compromise our employees, I will report you. I told him straight up. And that meant I risked my job. I risked, you know, my income. But at the end of the day, we worked together for years because he understood that my position would never change. So if you're going to commit a crime, or if you're going to do something unethical, don't tell me, because I will report you. And it's not, you know, it's not wishy-washy. It's not a maybe. It's 100%. This is what's going to happen, and you will always know this when you're dealing with me, right? And I think so. Knowing who you are, and then standing on that ground, no matter what, even if it risks your job, even if it risks your income, will get you far.
I like that. I think that uncompromising attitude is the right way to go. And like we put back to upbringing, how we raise children as well, to have that mindset. Sindy, I want to come to you quickly while we talk about being connected as women, and especially, you know, in terms of how there are so many dynamic and brilliant Zimbabweans all over the world. All right. Just like I said on this call, okay, we've got Dubai, we've got Toronto, we've got South Africa, Zimbabwe, you know. So for me, I'm like, well, you know, we do and Florida. I need to understand women like yourselves who are out there. If you are in a position of leadership, does it matter to you when you look at a CV or when you attend an event, if someone is Zimbabwean or African? Do you have a bias toward your own? And or you literally fair game, it doesn't matter where they're from, if she's good, she's good? Or do you deep down in your heart always look out for your own? How does that work?
That's a very interesting question. Funny enough, yesterday a friend of mine, we had a Zoom party for a friend online. And we had different women logging on from different parts of the world and so forth. And of course, most of the people on the call were South African, because our friend, you know, she was born and raised in South Africa and so forth. And we spoke a lot about networking, and who do you care about the most when opportunities come up? Do you go to your homegirls first before you can extend it to somebody else on the outside? I mean, it's nature, girl. And to be honest, we have to be honest about it. But one thing that this friend of mine said, it doesn't matter for her. She said, for me, girls, it doesn't matter whether somebody's Zimbabwean, from Malawi, from wherever. At the end of the day, you're a woman, you're a girl, you're Black, you're all that. You're hustling like I'm trying to hustle. You're trying to put food on the table. We're all after there's a bigger picture here. We're not fighting against each other. We're not competing against each other. We're all trying to attain a goal that will get everybody somewhere. So if you walk into a room and I have a candle that is lit, do not come into the room and dim my candle. But what you need to do is you have to make sure that you make that candle brighter. And that, for me, it's stuck because, and I'm sure everybody has experienced it in that, personally, there are times when I felt I need to first reach to my homegirls network, because it's just nature. I want charity to start at home. I even did it with the charity organization when I launched it 10 years ago. My heart was at home. I thought, I'm a child of the soil. I need to start at home. And many people were attacking on, but why didn't you go here? Why did you choose here? Or why did you choose Bulawayo over Harare? Why did you? And I'm like, that's nothing to me. At the end of the day, Zimbabwe is Zimbabwe. I'm not torn between being Shona or being Ndebele, or I'm in South Africa. Oh, do you belong to the Zulus? Do you belong to city people? Whatever. At the end of the day, it starts at home. And yes, I will open up the avenues for my people from home first before I can think for anybody else. But let's just be honest, girls. Sometimes you don't get to really have honest opportunities with people of where you come from. Some people might really be working against you. So then you often have to make that choice to step outside of those networks and work with other people. I honestly do not look at where people come from. The work that we do not have that bias to say person comes from here. And to be honest, in my organization, 97% of the people that volunteer that have done the work for the past 10 years have been non-Zimbabweans, which totally blows my mind, and sometimes it hurts me, but it has never stopped me from having love and care to still take the work that we're doing and do it in Zimbabwe and do it elsewhere in Southern Africa, because my roots are all over, So I've taken myself out of that mentality to say, I'm only going to deal with Zimbabweans, I'm only going to deal with South Africans, I'm only going to deal with people from Southern Africa, because it doesn't work like that. I'm global, I'm an international citizen. So I find that
you're a global citizen now. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Are they of the ladies here? Does anyone disagree with that viewpoint? And does anyone find themselves with an inherent bias where they're like, this is an African sister, this is a Zimbabwean sister? Okay. Tell me.
Oh, I'm so passionate about this topic. Oh my goodness. So I am very passionate about this topic. I don't tolerate bias of any kind, but it's because where does it stop? Then it means that people who are disabled won't have opportunities. People who are blind, our sons are, people, when you look at the world, the way that the world is today, more women have advanced education than men, right? And yet in all seats of power, the majority is men everywhere, whether it's in politics or in business. Why? Because of this kind of bias. So in my opinion, when you mentioned the resume, Ruvheneko. When I am looking at a resume, I try to ensure that my language has no bias. It's not him or it's not her. And, the role itself has no bias. It's not Zimbabwean or, wherever the person is. But what I would do is, for example, in Zim Thrive was to say, I am passionate about our people. I am passionate about our country. And I want to ensure that, we look at economic development for our country. We look at, ensuring that we're propelling, men and women in our country forward. And consequently, let me create a platform that does that, as opposed to, injecting bias in corporate America, for example, because then if it has to stop with me, right? I can't be propelling bias forward. And so I really encourage everyone as a leader to look at the language that you're using, look at the conversations that you're having to ensure that you are not part of that problem. you're not part of the reason why women are, there's very few women in executive roles across the world.
Yeah, and I think just to tag to that, if I may, I think there's another, I see us actually having a duty of care to our people. Whilst it might seem like a tangent of bias, if I'm walking onto a floor where literally the only women in the streets are PAs, receptionists, or low-level admin females, and none of them are of color, you get in there and you're saying something wrong with the balance. I do believe that they're bright Black Africans in this world. Why do they not have a seat at the table? There have been environments that have made it my responsibility to change that dynamic. But the interesting thing is, at the point that you do have a short list that does include an applicant, you have to go through groups to get them on board, and you feel you've got to prove so much more that they're the best person for the job. So
they have to be the best person for the job. Exactly.
The best person for the job. So for me, absolutely, let me have a short list, and I would like to give someone an opportunity who may not get it because their surname looks different. Let me be the one to bring it to the door. They're going to go through hoops to get the job. As the hiring manager, I may have to go through additional hoops so that my superiors understand why I've brought them on board. But I'm prepared to do that because somebody's got to give them a chance as much as someone gave me a chance.
So ladies, we're gonna have to bring it in now with our parting shots because we're out of time. But I wanted to go to some of the comments I'm seeing on Facebook. I can't see all of them, which for some reason I'm seeing only 4. I'm not sure why. When it says there's about 20, but I'm just going to read one that I can see here clearly, which is from Chenesai Mukora-Mangoma. So Chenesai says, courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. We must cultivate a way of engaging with the world from a place of worthiness. Above all, greatness is determined by service. So that's pretty much echoing what most of you have said tonight. Your service, your level of excellence speaks for itself. Do the work. I know, Mildred, you're quite passionate about that. Just do the work. Don't make it complicated. So I think as a woman, when you're trying to accelerate and you're trying to rise, that is the most important thing. And then Marianne Asani Kwidini says consistency is key. Ladies, I would just like to give each of you the opportunity for a parting shot. And I just ask you to just give us your last sort of 30 to 60 seconds about what you think we should be doing more of in terms of leveraging on these kinds of networks. You spoke, Mucha, about you being able to have a phone book that is so powerful, but you don't know what on earth to do with it. We go to conferences and events all the time. We have platforms like this where we have each other's handles. We're on LinkedIn, we're on whatever. We actually sometimes don't know how to bring it all together and use it for something purposeful. So in talking of that, at the closing, just to say, how do we leverage on each other, and all of you who are out there in the world, and not in our country anymore, but how do we still network as Zimbabweans to change and improve the perception of our country, and ultimately in a more deliberate way as women in particular?
I'm gonna jump in because I need to jump out like really quickly.
Yes, you did say shame. Sorry. Yeah, please go ahead first. Yeah,
I think it's very important to build systems and processes that allow for increased inclusivity. We are not going to win this fight with 10 people on top. We're going to win this fight with 100 people on top. So unless we get to a point where we understand that the systems are broken and the processes are not inclusive, we're going to continue the fight with too few women on top that are not going to get us where we need to get. I'm very passionate about that. I think voices are important. Intergenerational conversations are crucial. And I think we need to get to a point where we understand that if I am one woman, for me right now, the big thing is, if I am going to have a platform, who am I building up and what am I building them up to? So whatever I put on social media, whether LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever young girl I encounter, I want to give them so much power that they believe that they can. Because in inclusivity, we will win. But as long as we stay fragmented with very top, we're going to continue fighting at a slower pace. So processes, systems that are going to allow us to include more women to the table. And whenever you get out to speak, whatever platform, it's never too small. Imagine, who are you bringing up? What are you telling these young girls about what they can do? And yes, they can be mothers, they can be wives, they can be all of it. Our help right now is, how do we empower them to bring the balance? Because we're doing it. So it should be easier for them to be that PhD, to do that PhD, have a husband, it should be easier, not harder. So if we're not making it easier for them, then what are we doing? What are we doing? Systems is inclusivity. The more the merrier. I'm out, girls. I'm so sorry. I wanted to hear
No, thank you, Chenesai. Thank you so much. Bless you. Go and be great. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what to say after that. I honestly do not know what to say. But at the end of the day, I've always said, you know, women, we should really stop being in competition and fighting one another. We should really, you know, raise the bar for not just yourself, but for the next person. Raise it so high so that, you know, so that whoever is coming after you can raise it even higher. We really should stop looking at what Mildred is doing. I'm going to make sure that I try to compete with her in whatever she's doing. Let us stay in our own lanes. I think if each of us get the whole lesson of stay in your lane, because there is so much enough for all of us to contribute into this bigger picture of whatever we need to do, we should be fine. But let's also create opportunities. And that's just how, sorry, you need to.
Hi, sweetheart. Hi, these are future leaders, man.
That's so sweet.
I'm sorry about that. But,
no, Sindy, it's important that she knows even here on this platform, she belongs. So please don't apologize for my niece. Thank you.
It doesn't matter if you're Zimbabwean, you're from South Africa, you're from India, whatever. Women, we do it. You look at Mucha, like, I don't like her because she looks like she's all that, or her bio says she's been a VP of this and a VP of that. But we have to really think, if my sister could get there, it means that I could get there as well. Like, oh, I could even get to be a bit higher. If Sindy comes and says, I aspire to be the next president, you should say to me, go girl, but definitely you can do it. You shouldn't be going behind me and saying, who does she think she is? She definitely cannot do that. So I think we should continue lighting those candles for each other, but make space for everybody so that we continue training, mentorship, coaching.
Solid words there. Mildred?
First of all, Ruvheneko, I don't know why we don't know each other. I don't know why we're not friends. I don't know. You have been so intellectually stimulating, and, you know, just your poise. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you. I'll start there. And, for me, it's three pieces of, takeaways is one, no one goes home thinking about you. Nobody. It is your responsibility to make yourself heard. And I found that, in hiring, interviewing men versus women, men are comfortable asking for what they want. A woman will come into the room and ask for a salary for the same job, $30,000 to $40,000 less than a man. So maybe the, disparity in income is our fault, right? So it's really important for you to know that no one goes home thinking about you. You've got to stand up and, represent yourself and think for yourself. And then secondly, we should engage men to think about women. So when you ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for disabled people, for example? I didn't do anything for disabled people yesterday because it wasn't top of mind. I haven't done anything for a disabled person in the past week because it wasn't top of mind. So what happens is that men are not doing things to help propel women or to be genuine partners, gender partnership because we are not engaging them in the conversation. So it's really important to ask the men around us, hey, when was the last time you considered a woman for this role? When was the last time you encouraged a woman or gave her positive feedback? When was the last time you gave her a raise or a bonus or whatever the case may be? Let's ensure that we are, because I don't think they're doing it on purpose. I think it's just simply not top of mind. So let's ensure that we are encouraging both men and women to engage in conversations that propel women forward. And then lastly, we can create anything. We are responsible for the creation of opportunities for our daughters, for the women that will follow us as leaders and as individuals. So let's create, if the platform doesn't exist, create it. There is absolutely nothing that is stopping us from doing that other than ourselves. And if you don't have the resources or the time to do it, engage people who will and engage people who can. When I look at the Zim Thrive platform, we have built such an impressive, group of individuals who can do a variety of things, agriculture, medicine, you name it, because you can't do it alone. But put people together who can build and, create something that will propel our future leaders forward. And yeah, Ruvheneko, thank you. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred. And to the woman of the moment, all right, the one who made all this magic happen, Mucha, I want to start by thanking you again for doing this. And for, like you said in the beginning, you're in the fire sector, but you found a gap during COVID, you know, during this period we're all living in. It's amazing how we had the whole conversation for 1 hour, ladies, and didn't mention the C word. But anyway, so look, I just wanted to say, you know what, you don't always have to be in a sector to find a gap and find the need for dialogue, isn't it? So, Mucha, I'll now ask you to give us your parting shot in sort of a summation of what this conversation was really all about.
Sure.
Because in a lot of ways, I'm your guest, you know, and I'm just privileged to have been given the opportunity. So please, over to you.
No, gladly. So my nuggets of wisdom are really quite straightforward. We are so much stronger together. And my desire is to just see women recognize that and run with it. So the same way that I'm able to reach out to a Mildred, a Sindy, a Ruvheneko, a Chenesai to say, girls, I'm thinking about this, let's roll with it. And you guys being willing to do it is kind of the root of what I'm saying. I think for people who feel a little bit intimidated to reach out and seek support, seek help, seek advice, people have gone down a path before you. Take advantage of that path that they've set up. Walk behind it without feeling that you're subservient, without feeling that it's taking your shine away because so-and-so did it before I did. Well, actually, the reason they did it and the reason they've been successful is because they figured out a formula that they can hand over to you without you needing to reinvent the wheel. So my big thing is really just find strength in each other, work together, reach out to each other, seek advice, seek guidance. There's so much knowledge within the Zimbabwean community who've gone on to do incredible things in the diaspora. And I cannot be prouder to come from this stock of Zimbabweans who are able to talk about running large corporates, walking with Prince Harry. If you didn't know, everybody, Sindy's the Prince Harry lady on this platform. But these are big ticket things that not any odd person can do. So if you sit back and think I'm too platinum to reach out to Sindy, or I don't like the way Midu speaks, or Ruvheneko is, then you're the one missing out, because our lives are carrying on while you're sitting and people are living rent-free in your head. And then really, I'm just encouraging everybody to just create networks that work. Let them work for you. Let them work for what you want them to achieve. And don't feel shy to, again, pick up the phone, have a quick conversation. Hey, thinking about doing this. This is your area of expertise. Can you help? Sometimes it's a no, that's okay. Some people in your network just like handing out cards, but don't like the follow through. That's okay too. Find people who do. And then my kind of summation of today's platform is I am so privileged to get to converse with all of you. I think you're all such amazing women. You make Zimbabwe proud. You make me proud to be Zimbabwean. And, you know, the grace with which you occupy your individual spaces and do it effortlessly. And, you know, there are no airs and graces to go with it. You're just authentically you. And that's something that permeates in everything you say, in the way that you present yourself. So I implore you to carry on being the fantastic women you are. And let's take generations along with us on this journey that is life, and that is glass ceilings, and that is soaring. Ruvheneko, thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. You know, we had a solid panel here. Just to remind those that have just joined us now, toward the end, I see so many comments coming in now. But look, we had Mucha Nyandoro, who is the founder and principal of Manolith. Okay, she's based in Dubai, and she really put all of this together. She's worn so many hats and worked in many countries, Europe, Middle East, Africa, you know, and she's passionate about changing Zimbabwe's perception. Also to Chenesai Mukora-Mangoma, who's just signed out. Unfortunately, she's probably got to be a mum or something great. So she's a lawyer focusing on international trade and investment, based here in Zimbabwe. And she also has worked with Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, UK, using fashion more than anything, which is what a lot of us know her for. But she is a lawyer focused on human development. And she's actually doing a report with the UN at the moment. And then we've got Sindy Zemura-Bernard. Okay, she's in Toronto, and she is the founding CEO of South Africa Embrace Foundation. So again, also just the passion of being a humanitarian, an entrepreneur, pioneer, and all of these women, like I say, are passionate about our country, And especially women and girls, there's always a bias toward that, especially women in power, which is encouraging because it means our daughters and their daughters are well taken care of. Women at the top, we're going to pull them up the rungs of the ladder. And then we've also got Mildred Munjanganja. Okay, she is the founder of Zim Thrive, based in Florida in the USA. She's also so passionate about women empowerment and is a speaker on many different platforms, especially education platforms. So universities, high schools. Now, when you find kids liking someone, you know that person is really, really cool, because that is the generation we're building and that's the generation we're developing. So ladies, I want to thank you so much for your time on a Sunday afternoon and a Sunday evening based on our different time zones. It's been an absolute pleasure sitting here with you tonight. Thank you, thank you.